I was just wondering, just say you're in some causal emotion, you just started connecting to it and you're crying, and then I've just been wondering in the last couple of weeks, because there's this law of repentance, you've said before you'll be crying for 4 hours in a day. Is what's happening there, like, I can't understand why God doesn't, if you're connecting with the causal emotion, why isn't that dealt with in an instant? If God is, has the power to do that, why wouldn't that? And why would you need to be crying for 4 hours? Because I'm finding with myself, when I'm in those emotions, it's like there's, like you've said before, different facets, and you'll be moving from, you don't know whether it is a causal emotion or not, but you'll be moving from one thing, and then your intellect will be saying, I'm no good, I've never been good. And then you'll suddenly, that'll be 3 seconds of a big, oh, coming out, and then you go to the next thing, and then it'll be like slightly different.
So what's happening there, so here's you as the person, right? So if you could think of emotion passing through you initially. So when you were a child, emotion should have been allowed to pass through you, right? And then what happened with your parents and interactions with the environment, school and all these other things, different emotions weren't allowed to pass through you. So they were blocked at different places. And those different places often mirror different places in your own body. Right? So you've got all of these blockages to the flow of the emotion. Now, if I can allow my emotions to flow as they're being created, then all emotion will never be stored inside of me. I'll always be reflecting the emotion and feeling the emotion, but it will all just pass through me naturally. The problem with these stored emotions are that we've got hundreds of them. Because in our childhood, we learnt to store them, and even one event can store, as we've illustrated in the past, can store lots and lots of different emotions. So we might have hundreds of these blockages. Now, every one of those blockages is like a barb, like a barbed arrow sticking in you, if you like, at the soul level. Now, to pull out a barb requires the experience in this case, because remember, it was the thing that created this blocked emotion was that we weren't allowed to have the flow of emotion. So what needs to happen is all of these emotions need to flow. It's the flowing of the emotion that allows God to actually come in and pick it out. Now, as you pointed out, in one particular event, there may be like 10, 20, 30 different emotions created that we didn't allow to flow because it wasn't allowed at the time. And then because of that, it's stored in our soul condition, and then other events got triggered from that, which then created their own stored emotion on top of that, and then other events got triggered, which created another set of stored emotions on top of that. So instead of having this one emotion now of unworthiness sitting in here from one event, I now have like a great big pile of these emotions inside of me, all different events that happened, all that I stored, that couldn't flow because I couldn't allow myself, and usually it's because of my parents or environment, couldn't allow myself from experiencing them. So now let's say we're in the condition where they start to flow, which is the condition you're in, right? So these emotions start to flow. So what can happen? You've now got like this pile of them inside of yourself, of emotions. Your soul is like that, just this, all this pile of emotions. And there's this pile of emotions reflecting the one type of emotion, like unworthiness or whatever it is. Now, if all of those emotions just flow out of you at the same moment, then you would have a lot of difficulty coping or living through the experience. So what's got to happen is your soul's got to expand from this shriveled up place where it can't feel any of those emotions into this place where it can grow enough to actually feel and cope with those emotions. Now, that is going to mean this process of letting some of the emotion out and your soul expands, right? Now, your soul can't expand without these emotions flowing from you, and this is very dependent upon your will. So while I have the will and these emotions flow out of me, then God can come and help me through that process. But the reason why God can't just come and grab all of those emotions and take them away from me is because my soul needs to expand in order to experience them. So there's going to be a time process where my soul's expanding, I'm experiencing a bit more, my soul's expanding a bit more, I'm feeling a bit more of that same emotion. Now in my case, I've had really, really deep hurts that needed to be healed. and a great big mountain of emotions. And so often I'll be crying for 4 hours, but it will be about 1 or 2 or 3 or 5 or 10 different emotions in that one experience, but it's not all of the emotions that I feel about that particular thing. Now, if we're younger like yourself, you'll find that you'll get through those emotions a lot more rapidly, and you'll have all these facets come up one after the other, even in a few minutes. Now, that doesn't happen as much for myself because there's a huge pile of them, and there's a lot more of them for me to experience. It's just a matter of allowing yourself to actually go through that process.
So when you get to the emotion that has caused this event, you going through these layers, is there a need for you to be crying for much time? Or
no,
doesn't God just go, okay, you're at the causal thing now, let's take it away?
God can take away any emotion as long as you're prepared to feel it in its full amount. The problem is that most of us aren't prepared to feel it in its full amount, and so God can't take it away. He can only take it away to the degree we're prepared to feel it. Does that make sense? So it's based on our will. If our will is allowing all of our emotions and we're prepared to be overwhelmed by them, then God can take away more of it in that first process, if you like. But if our will, or we've got this pile of emotions, like in my case, one after the other, and there's a long set of memories, which are also piled into emotions of a longer life than the average person. So what's happened is there's much more for me to experience as a result of that. Does that make sense? But when you allow the emotions to start flowing, what you're doing now is letting them out. It's our free will, where we love ourselves, that causes us to allow these emotions to flow out of us. As soon as we exercise our free will, God can work with us. If we're not exercising our free will to feel those emotions, God is using external things to try and trigger those emotions, of which the main one is the law of attraction, in order to trigger those emotions inside of us. So the key is for yourself is to understand that God can certainly grab hold of these emotions and take them away from you very rapidly. Your question is also prompted by some spirits who have the same feeling, like if they start this process of emotions, why is it that God can't just grab them and deal with them? God is already doing that, but God is dependent upon your exercise of your own free will, and your own free will is dependent upon how much you're willing to expand emotionally.